Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome back to City Club of Chicago, Cook County Sheriff Tom Dart.
Thanks, Jay. Hey, thank you so much. And so I don't forget this later, I do want to acknowledge, because she hasn't made my other speeches, my wife Patricia is here today. And, truly, without her, I wouldn't be able to do this. Because as many of the staff here can tell you, we work very long hours at our place, and the norm is about 11 hours a day. We have 5 children. The oldest is 8, the youngest is 8 months. And so, without her keeping it all together, I wouldn't be able to do what I've been doing. So I cannot thank you enough. When we were asked to come here today and speak, we weren't sure what the topic was going to be, and we had quite a few to choose from. And for those of you who are looking forward to more fighting dogs or trafficking or shanks in the jail, or for that matter our bologna sandwiches, we are not going to do that today, primarily because our inmates right now are eating corned beef and cabbage. We gave them that today in honor of St. Patrick's Day. A nice little perk for them. They promise to be good boys and girls as a result of that. What we thought would really be much more relevant for us to talk about today, about our office, is really what's impacting everyone's talking about these days, is the economy and saving money. And I know for some people out there, the thought of county government saving money in the same sentence doesn't work for a lot of people, but it's the truth. We are doing it, and we have to do it. And at the heart of it, I can't emphasize enough to you, we talk about this in our office all the time. The public out there, they distrust and do not like people in government right now. And historically, they've always had some level of distrust. But the level that we see right now is really unprecedented. And do they have some reasons? Absolutely they have some reasons. I mean, are some of the folks in public office forgetting why they're there, forgetting who's paying their check, forgetting that the money that we're talking about is actually real money? That the money that we're taking from taxpayers they can be using for their children, to send them to a school of their choice. All these things that sometimes are taken for granted are the things that are impacting people. At the same time, they're reading about bank bailouts, and at the same time, they're giving out bonuses. So we have an electorate that is very, very dissatisfied, very angry, and they have a lot of reasons to be. But we have to restore their faith. And why is that? We cannot deal with this crisis. It's truly a crisis that is of epic proportions. The only thing that's worse than this is the Great Depression. We can't begin to solve those issues unless we can regain some people's trust. And this isn't just made-up stuff. We all know, we can run down the list of it, but I thought some of these things were particularly interesting when you look at other governments and what's happening there. This is not unique to Illinois. We have our own unique aspects. We have our own former governors who are stars of TV, network, television, and not everybody has that, mind you. But our government has issues, but others do as well. But when it comes to us dealing with things in our office, we have looked at it from a lot of different ways, and one of them is how we look at waste and how we approach that. And a lot of those things, I'll tell you what, my wife can attest to this, comes from a lot of my own personal feelings on things and about waste in my house. I'm always running around my house, shutting off lights and the whole 9 yards. This is actually a snapshot of Division 9. You can see the one that I'm holding now is the head of the Gangster Disciples. The woman next to me is serving presently a 9-year term. I think is her term right now. She's trying to figure out what the mistake she did 9 years ago that got her locked up. This is an average day in Division 9, though. But a lot of the things that we do are things that I bring to the table from my work, my dealings with my family, and the rest of it. And as I say, dealing with waste. And when you talk about the other governments, as I say, I think it does provide some degree of perspective. Look at California, though I prefer not to be compared to California for many reasons. Just yesterday, they said they're going to be closing 17 courtrooms. They've already closed courtrooms every third Wednesday. Kansas courts close every Friday in April and May. Kansas City just closed half its schools. Detroit announced they're closing 40 schools today. In our own state, furlough days throughout the city of Chicago. We did our own furlough days in the sheriff's office last year. We're going to be doing more of those. Elgin's cutting teachers, Naperville cutting police. 1 in 10 in Illinois are out of a job. 1 in 5 in Rockford are unemployed. Our foreclosures, which we can tell you all about, in 2000, we did about 2,000 of them. Now we're at 4,500. We used to go to the area of Barrington. We used to go there about 4 times a year. We go there at least 4 times a month now. So for the people that think, oh, well, these are just the subprime loans in tough neighborhoods, that's not the case, folks. We're seeing this everywhere, and it's hitting everybody. And it is of monumental proportions, and we need to do something about it. And we don't have any qualms. Our ability to impact the federal and state level is minimal. But within our own office, we have found things that we can do better. And we'd like to think we've done it through being creative and being somewhat innovative. Most of the stuff we're doing right now, other things are on the table, but it's real money, and it's using creativity. Just to give you a little snapshot of our office, in 2005, our office had about 7,000 employees. Today, we're at 6,700. Loss of 300? Well, it's actually more than that, because we've been forced to hire 800 additional correctional officers. So the number we really are down to is we're down to about 6,000 employees that I started with. So we've cut approximately 1,000 jobs in the time I've been around. Most all of these employees are sworn employees, so these are not people that are civilians that I'm picking off the street. They're people that are sworn, union represent people who do most of the work of our office. Our budget is about $457 million. We're the second largest jail in the nation. We secure hundreds of courtrooms in 17 different buildings. Our police department deals with vice issues, gang issues, hostage and barricade issues. We have a huge, huge mandate, folks. The question is then, how do we begin to go about saving? And how is it that we can do our part to try to make a dent in this? And frankly, as I say, restore faith in the public that some people are getting it, that they're understanding we can't do things the way we used to do. We got to change. So the biggest area we can focus on, where we can make most of our changes, is in the jail, because that's the largest part of my budget. Some of the things there are beyond my control. The population coming in and out, I wouldn't begin to take credit for all that, though we've done some things creatively. But just so you know, we're the largest single-site jail in the nation. We used to have 10,000 people there. Today, our capacity is down to 9,100. In 2004, we processed 106,000 people. This past year was 86,000. The norm used to be, for as long as people can remember, we had people sleeping on the floor at the jail. We haven't had anybody sleeping on the floor since April, I think, in 2008. And that has been done through a lot of different methods where I think a lot of it has to do with things we've done inside. And by doing that, it gets us out of lawsuits. Our staffing, however, is very low. We're one of the lowest in the country, whereas Rikers Island has 1 correctional officer per detainee. We're at about 1 correctional officer per 3 detainees. As a result of that, at the same time we're needing to cut and the revenues are down, the federal court has ordered me to hire more people. And I think everyone in this room can understand that this really is not a good time to try to do that while you have all these pressures and you have a county board saying you got to cut, you got to cut, you got to cut. So what do? Do we just sit here and whine and say, listen, I want to raise everybody's taxes? No, we're looking inside and figuring out how can we do things differently. And one of the first places we looked at, one of the first places where we knew we can get immediate savings, is if we started closing down buildings. And we looked at, went back over a Google search and tried to find out when that had ever happened. We don't think it's ever happened in the history of Cook County, where they've shut down facilities. We shut down about a month and a half ago one of our dorms that held over 600 people in it. We are now going to shut down another dorm in about 2 weeks that holds over 300 people in it. By doing that, the savings are unbelievable, folks. Just annually, each year, shutting down one of these buildings is going to save us $875,000 in light, heating, water, and maintenance. And maintenance is tough. It's really tough. And we have some great people like Jim D'Amico and the like who are helping us with this. To give them one less building to work on is a big thing. We also saved 175 correctional officers. By doing that, I'm cutting dramatically into my overtime, and I'm thinking that I should be able to ask the federal judge, who is amazing. She is an amazing woman who has spent a lot of time on this Duran case, to ask her that maybe we don't need to hire as many correctional officers, I don't have as many buildings anymore. And that's my hope. And so I can start cutting into that number that I'm being required to hire. We're looking at, by shutting these buildings down, overtime, personnel, light, heat, the rest of it, in the area of about $15 million a year we can save. It's an obvious thing that's out there, but it was something that really hadn't been tackled before, and we feel very strongly that this and other things are going to get us at this number. One of the other things we felt, too, was find another place to put these people. Many people in this room, I've asked you if you'd take some of these folks home. I haven't had a lot of takers. But around the state, we found out that many counties, for different reasons, from county to county, has excess bed capacity. So I went and met with different sheriffs, and in Jefferson County, which is in Mount Vernon, Illinois, about a 4.5-hour drive or so, we presently house about 50 or 60 detainees. In Kankakee County, we have about 20 down there. How does that help us? Jefferson County charges us $50 a day. Here in Cook County, it costs us $120 a day. By working my schedule so that I'm only doing one bus trip a week down there to bring people back to the court, the savings are huge. And the other aspect of it too, folks, is that I think some of you may have heard my other speeches from the last time I was here. There's a couple of the people that are at the jail right now that aren't nice people. One or two of them, not nice people. The rest of them are just phenomenal people to hang out with. They do it all the time. We have some really nasty people there. When we can take them and pull them out of the jail, when they get the impression that they're running the place and they can decide who on what tier gets to do what, who gets to eat first and who gets to eat what, we then remind them that this is a really big state and you're about to see it. And off they go. And by sending them down to Jefferson County, their friends, their family that they're so tight with, and their fellow gang members that love them to tears, they don't visit them anymore. And they all of a sudden change their tune. And so it's been something where we found very effective, both from the cost side of it, but also for the security side of it, when people decide that they're going to run the jail. And so it's been very, very effective, saving us a lot of money there. Our food service, here's something that was driving me absolutely nuts. The way it has been set up, and most of it is dictated by the buildings and the space constraints we have. For an inmate to have breakfast, you wake them up about 4:30, we wheel the food into their living unit, pull the trays out, we go cell to cell, and once again, glad you're sitting down. Most of the detainees don't want to wake up and have breakfast. So what ends up happening, most of those meals get thrown away. And I remember going through these divisions and seeing these trays stacked up and wondering what the heck it was, and it was the breakfasts and nobody was eating. It's like, well, we can't keep doing that. So what we're doing is the one dorm that we have closed down, we are now opening up as a cafeteria type place where we're going to be feeding people there. What we've estimated right now that conservatively we're going to be saving at least $1 million a year there, because just based on not throwing the food out, based on the fact that a guy has to wake up at 4:30 in the morning to walk over to this cafeteria place to eat. I don't think I'm going to get a lot of takers there. And it's their choice. If they want to come, they got to wake up. But a lot of the guys we have are not early risers. So we're not expecting an overflow crowd. The other area is we're taking over our laundry. Now, this is something we're not doing right now. We're planning on doing it in the next few months, where we're going to have the detainees doing our laundry. Right now, we send it out. It costs about $750,000 a year for that. By doing it inside, we should be able to cut the cost down to next to nothing. We already have the washers and dryers, and all that's been purchased already, so the savings will be huge. One of the other areas that was particularly troublesome to me, that isn't huge dollars, but it's more of just trying to do the right thing here, was in recycling. Because you can imagine we go through a lot of things there at the jail. And we were making next to nothing. We were making about $18,000 a year in recycling, and it's an open question why we were making so little, but we were making next to nothing. When we took it over about 2 years ago, we're averaging about $75,000 a year now. And we're doing it ourselves. And we're giving people, detainees, things to do as well. So it works at about a dozen different levels. So that one we see a lot of potential as well. The area where we can make the most savings, and the area that's been a bone of contention for me over the years has been in the area of electronic monitoring. A lot of other states have been doing it in a much more robust way. We were the only state that used to have the sheriff picking who went out, which I think I've mentioned to some people before. I couldn't think of anybody in a poorer position to pick who should go out than me, and yet we were doing it, and it wasn't good. So we stopped doing it, we sort of forced the issue with the judiciary, and now they've sort of creeped along where they're involved now, where today they have 341 people out on electronic monitoring. And what that means is that as opposed to the $120 a day cost me to keep somebody there, it's about $45 a day to have someone on electronic monitoring. And it's used throughout the country. It's not novel. It's not scary. These are not people that are, members of Al-Qaeda. These are people that usually have a drug problem or somebody who's stolen something. And we have the capacity for about 1,500 people to go out. So when we're only at about 340 right now, we have a huge potential there. And we think it should be done. And here's the thing, I just wanted to mention this to you, I think I brought it with me. Here's an idea, just 3 cases, this is just from this past week. People that when you talk about it costs us $117 a day, that's not the real cost. Here's where you look at what the real costs are. Here's a guy who's in on, he needs $500 to get out of jail, and he's in on a theft charge. On March 13th, he decided to light his bed on fire. He started throwing the bedding out the door, started throwing more blankets on it, set it on fire. What we then had to do, and then he was going to kill himself too to boot, which he didn't pull off. And we then had to clear the entire tier out, pull everybody out, give everybody a medical screening, give him a psych screening, and off he goes. So his $170 just went through the roof in one day. And this isn't the first time he did it. And when his case came up this week and we were sitting around talking about it, we were all talking about kicking in $20 each and we'll bond them out ourselves, just get them out of jail. Potential liability issue, we can move beyond that. But here's another guy here. Our officer smelled a strong odor, most people are done eating. Smelled a strong odor in the cell. He observed 12 juice bottles which appeared to be filled with urine. The officer went to the detainee, asked him to empty all the bottles in the toilet. The detainee then reached in the bag, removed 3 more bottles which contained a dark colored substance. The officer asked him what it was, and he said, the other stuff, you know what it is. We then had to take down his living unit and then take him out for a psych evaluation. And he's in on a drug case. Could this be someone that on electronic monitoring, going into mental health programs, being kept out of our jail, and being on his meds, we wouldn't see him again? No, absolutely. And here's a woman that we had who is in on a burglary charge, low bond. Could she be on him? Absolutely. What did she do? She was having a bad day, so she drank disinfectant. And we then had to take her to the hospital. She had an extended stay at the hospital. All things that we could have avoided. All things that, when you start looking at your wallet, the money going out to the county folks, it's reckless and irresponsible for us not to be doing these things. All these are low-level offenders. They're not going to hurt anybody outside. No more than when a judge gives someone an I-bond right now, which they do all the time. And yet, we're not doing this anyway like we should. So it's one of the things I've pushed, I'll continue to push. We've tried a couple of other things in regards to charging detainees for certain services. We've attempted that with the county board. The county board, for whatever reason, has chosen not to do that. We've asked them to be charged just a small fee for their medicine, a small fee for doctor's visits. If they don't have the money, they still get the medicine. If they don't have the money, they still get to see the doctor. But a lot of these guys have money on an account with us. It's called a commissary account, where either themselves or a loved one can put money on an account for them, and then they can draw it down. They usually use it to buy potato chips and extra food and shoes and stuff, because I give them some really crappy shoes to wear, so they'll pick their own shoes then. We could take money out of that if they want to go and see a doctor or go for medicine. Because one of the other things that does, it curbs what a lot of detainees do, is they'll fake being sick, because what it does is it takes them out of their living unit, they get dropped down in the tunnel, and they get moved to a different unit where they can congregate with other members of their gang. If they have to pay a price for that, a lot of them aren't going to do it. So it makes sense both from a financial standpoint, but also from a management standpoint. We also started charging the inmates when they started ripping up their cells, which we had not been doing before. We take money from their commissary accounts when they rip up the jail cell. And in the past few years, we've gotten, I think, $200,000 we've charged against them so far. So those are some of the things. We've worked on our lawsuits. Strip searches have been really hitting us hard as far as money. So before O'Hare Airport actually got it, we started using those L3 body scan machines now, so we'd stopped doing strip searches about 2 years ago. It's helped us a great deal on the lawsuit side. Do inmates still sneak stuff in? Yeah, they were sneaking it in before, though, too. So it wasn't eliminated with these machines, but it wasn't eliminated before either. But we've saved some money there. And as I mentioned before, by getting the inmates off the floor and having a plan to keep them off the floor, we're very close to getting out from underneath this Duran consent decree, which has been around for 35 years, which costs us about $300,000 a year in legal fees. So we have some real ideas making a difference here. We've got a couple other ones with the video visitation, where by not having all these folks coming in to visit actually inside the division, it helps with security. It also prevents contraband from coming in. And the other issue I've been pushing as well with the courts, and I haven't gotten real far with it, is to use something that is being done throughout the United States, which is to use closed circuit television for certain types of hearings, so that, and I knew this from my days as a state's attorney, 65–70% of the cases on your call on any given day, nothing goes on. Literally, the two attorneys pass documents to each other. There's no hearings, there's no need for the defendant to even speak. By having closed circuit, I obviously don't have to move these people, and I move about 1,500 people a day. And you can imagine how difficult that is and how expensive that is. So I was just able to, from their own division, zip them over to Markham or Maywood or wherever via closed circuit. It would save us countless, hundreds of thousands of dollars. They're doing it in other jurisdictions. I've thrown it out to our court here, and they shot it down already. I'm hoping that they'll see the light, that this, if we can do it as a pilot, whatever they want to do, but we cannot, as I mentioned earlier on, we cannot keep acting as if we're back in the 80s and 90s and there's money coming out of our ears and it's everywhere and we'll just keep spending. We can't do that. We've got to start using our brains here, folks, and things like that will save us a lot of money, and it's just smart. It's just smart. The other area where we have issues where we've been trying to save money and do things better is outside of the jail, where we deal with the courts. And in the court area, there's a couple of major places we've worked on. One of them is civil process. We serve paper on people so that when there's a lawsuit, we're the ones that serves them with the different documents. What we did early on was we figured that if we went from the normal vehicles we used to hybrid vehicles, we could save money, and the amount we're saving is phenomenal. We used to spend $2,500 a month in gasoline. In just this unit, we're down to $1,300 a month. And then we went into these goofy Segways, and I say goofy just because they really look silly. They've tried to get me on one to take a picture, but I know that I can never get elected to anything again to get a picture of that. There's these three-wheel Segways, and what it was a very well-thought-out idea where, as opposed to our people, where we serve most of our paper in the downtown area, whereas you folks know there's not a lot of parking and poses a lot of issues. By using the Segways, a Segway costs us $7,000, a car costs us $21,000. But just as importantly, our productivity is doubled. We used to serve 220 orders a month. We do 440 a month now with just the Segway people. And the county gets $60 each time we do that. So just with these folks, they doubled everything they brought in from about $13,000 to $26,000. So we think, once again, using a little creativity, we've done a lot there. The area where we've been having a lot of problems, though, with our deputies is with the staffing issue, because we have not been hiring deputies. We are 230 fewer deputies than when I started. And it's very difficult to keep operating at that level. We keep opening more courtrooms and you can keep losing deputies. And as anybody who's been in the Daily Center realizes, if you go into many of the floors in the Daily Center, there is maybe one deputy for 8 courtrooms. The problem with that is that when violence occurs in a courtroom nationally, it almost always occurs in civil courtrooms, not in the criminal courtrooms where we're fully staffed. But obviously we can't not staff the criminal courtrooms. The CBA has been taking up this issue as other people, and I just got sued again the other day by somebody in regards to not having enough staffing in the courtrooms, which is, I agree, is a problem. What we've tried to do to address this, once again, as opposed to saying, give me more money, please raise more taxes, 2 just outrageous ideas. One was on the weekends. Right now we have bond courts on the weekends in all the suburban courthouses, Skokie, Rolling Meadows, Bridgeview, Maywood, and Markham. Presently, for example, if they arrest somebody in Niles on a DUI on Friday night, they take them to the Skokie courthouse and they bring them there Saturday morning. They have a bond hearing. They either stay in custody or they're released. My suggestion was that in that situation, instead of doing that, we will shut down all those courthouses on the weekends, and that same police department would take the individual down to 26 in California, where we'd have bond hearings there for everybody. Obviously, the only people that I thought were going to be upset with this were going to be the police chiefs from these departments, because obviously they're going to do a little bit more driving. It wasn't in the court shot that one down for reasons I cannot understand why. Because here's just an example. We've been doing snapshots of this. This is what it averaged. In the Skokie courthouse on a Saturday, we'll have 16 staff out there, 9 deputies. We average less than 9 defendants. So we have, almost double staff than we have defendants showing up. And the same thing out in Rolling Meadows. It's crazy numbers where you have all the staff there and nobody's showing up. And it happens all the time. Where if we just have people drive to a central location, we can save a lot of bodies. But we figured we'd save at least 50 deputies, 50, which then I can move around and put into some of these places where I'm really low and not have to cry to the county board saying I need more money. The other thing that we did, which was outrageous, and I knew it right when I said it, was that we were going to start shutting down the courthouses at 6 o'clock at night. Now, mind you, as someone who had been in a courtroom before as a prosecutor, I realized if a jury trial is going on, we're not going to walk in and say, sorry, the Gacy case has to stop, we're leaving. No, we would obviously keep the cases going. But as anybody in this room who knows, who's ever been in one of these courthouses, they come 2, 3, 4 o'clock, there's not much activity going on. But yet I'm required to have staff there after 6 o'clock at night. It makes absolutely no sense. And once again, I'm very puzzled as to why the judiciary doesn't see fit in this time when we're needing to be creative, why they won't go along with some of the stuff. As they say, it prevent me from having to hire more people. My police department, it's another area where it's particularly difficult right now because we started with 525 police officers in 2006. I'm down to 494 now. At the same time, my requests for service are all going up. I had 65,000 hours, man hours assisting other agencies last year. My HBT team, hostage and barricade team, is being used more than ever. We had over 500 call-outs just last year. Most towns are collapsing their hostage and barricade teams and they're calling us instead. For the last 2 years, I have been, that title I always sought too, I am the Chief of Police of Fort Heights. Their police department, many of you might know, vanished 2 years ago. We still can't find them. And so for approximately $1 million a year now, I'm out there doing all the police work. We like only the fact that the people of that town are really getting true police work finally, and crimes have gone down, and there's a level of security, and the kids are able to go out and play, and the seniors get to go walk the streets. That part's neat, but I'm not getting any money for it. We've attempted on 3 or 4 different levels, both from the federal government and the state, to get money, and we've been unable to do that. But that's pulling at me. That was not something on my agenda of things to do. We've been having many cities reach out to us, and this has been something going on around the country too, where a lot of towns and villages look at their budget and they find that their police department is the most expensive item on there. So they're eliminating their police department. We've had many towns come to us and say, listen, we're thinking of doing it. What can we charge you to take over our town for us? That is out there, and that's something that when we talk about cuts at our office, it's going to be running against some of the other currents that are out there right now. We're attempting to get grants. We're attempting to charge people for certain types of events that we go out to, whether it's accidents or other things. We've thrown out before about the Forest Preserve Police taking on some of their roles and duties. And then another little thing that popped up that you may have heard about that wasn't on our agenda, we had this thing called the Burr Oak Cemetery pop up. That was not on our list of things to do for the year. That cost us over $600,000 to do. We went to bankruptcy court with other creditors to try to get paid. We were informed that that was not going to work real well. So instead, right now, we are getting a licensing fee from the cemetery managers for a computer program we put together. So we are getting some money, but not nearly what it would cost us to put this all together. These are savings. These are things that I feel that are in line with what we need to be doing right now. We try to do it from the macro to the smaller ones. Myself, some people know, I drive myself and drive a lot of my friends and family nuts, but I thought from the beginning it's just not something that I should be doing. And that saves us in the area of about $500,000 a year. And would I like to? Yeah, I guess I would, but the reality is in this day and age, I can't do that. We've cut our travel down to nothing. The only time our staffs could travel anywhere is when either it's a local thing or when we had to go testify out in Washington, I drove. And the staff was in the car with me, and it was a delightful trip through a driving snowstorm in the mountains of West Virginia. So we've tried, from the little things to the bigger things, to try to make a dent. Because, as I mentioned at the beginning, the stakes are so high right now, honest to God. The economy is cratered, there's no end in sight in some of this, and we've got to restore faith in people. We get it, that we understand that you're hurting, and we're going to try to do things about it, not just act as if we're off in our own little world. And we have to restore the faith in people, that they realize We truly, truly care about them. We realize they have families, and we realize that their budgets are being stretched, and they want to do things with their kids, and they have dreams for their families that they can't do if we tax them out of it. And if we keep acting as if there's no end in sight, folks, let's just keep going after them. We can't do that. And the first way to do that is for us to restore faith in them, that we're trying each and every day to try to think makes things more efficient and to save money for them, because we owe this to them. Thank you very much.
Well, I think I've had my faith restored. I'd like to see anybody in government talk about cost savings, and Tom Dart has a whole laundry list of cost savings he's presented to us. We want to acknowledge that Tom Ricketts is with us. He's going to be our speaker on March 24th. Tom, please stand up. Again, I want to remind you to join the City Club of Chicago. It's still only $50, I believe. You'll get the emails announcing all of our future events. You get a chance to get first in, so to speak. Make sure you get a seat. We have a few questions that have been presented to us. Tom? I don't want to respond for you. The terrorist here says, why doesn't anyone advocate a program which Ronald Reagan abolished called revenue sharing? Cities, counties, and states take a share of the federal income tax.
Jay was yelling in my ear. Bert, I'm for this. Wow, that was a while ago. No, the question about trying to get the revenue sharing, I couldn't agree with you more. The problem has been, and I remember from my days in Springfield, is that you would do things on a state level, and the people down below you were the ones that usually end up holding the bag. And so the more revenue sharing would make more sense, because that's usually where most of the mandates are coming from the feds and from the state levels. So I agree with you, but I don't know what we could do about that. I'll get on that.
We also have a question from City Board Governor's member Joyce Saxon. She says, several times you have said your proposals have been shot down by the courts. How can we as voters help you out?
You know, the courts are an interesting animal in the sense that they're supposed to be kept as a separate entity from the executive, the legislature, and I understand that concept. That was truly one of the classes I showed up for at law school. But the harsh reality is they have to be brought into our world. They cannot keep acting like this. And a lot of us in this room have met judges, no judges, some phenomenal judges out there. Really there are. But they have to lose this notion that they're off in their own world, can do what they want, when they want. I'm not trying to explain to them how to make their rulings, but just in the day-to-day operations. It may have been nice back in the 60s, 70s, 80s, and 90s for that matter, where you could operate at a certain pace. We can't do that anymore. The longer these courthouses are open, when they're not being efficiently used, it's just bleeding us dry. Absolutely bleeding us dry. And I just challenge people, if you ever happen to be around, just walk around the courtrooms. And sure, someone will say, oh yeah, the courtroom was down that day because we were in the back doing a plea agreement. Or, that occurs sometimes. Yes, it does occur sometimes. All the times? No. Most of the times? Absolutely not. And if someone tells you that, they're outright lying to you. What they need to come up to the table and say, listen, like the rest of us, we need to start acting as if we're part of a team here. And how is it that we can work as a team to save us all a lot of money and just be, frankly, more efficient? I mean, I've been waiting for somebody to lay into me and explain to me why we need to keep operating on the weekends when there's nobody there. Why is it that we can't use closed circuit for people who literally have nothing to say to the court? Why? Every other system figures out a way to do it. They have phones, secure phones in the next room, their privacy if they want to talk to their lawyers in court. This makes no sense. And at the heart of it is a convenience, folks. The convenience of the fact that the attorney now doesn't have to show up to the jail to interview his client. because the client's brought to him at the courthouse, they can talk in front of the bench, everybody's happy that way. Well, guess what? We no longer can afford to have conveniences for people like that. We have to have this run in a more business-like fashion and say, listen, if there's a logical reason we can't do this, let's talk about it. But at the heart of it, people need to express their displeasure to the judiciary when they're not acting right. As I say, there's so many great judges, and I know so many of them. But as a whole, the institution needs to come a little bit more into the 21st century and say, listen, we need to change, and they need to hear it from the public, that you need to be more efficient. You need to, the hours you need to work. If for some reason your court call is wrapped up at 2 o'clock every day, don't make it a state secret. Let's figure out a way where we're going to be more efficient that way. They act as if, though, there's going to be this big game of gotcha because I get done every 2 o'clock every day, or when the summer comes, I get done earlier. We all have to work harder. I know that we don't get passes at our place. And as I say, many good judges, but they are very well compensated. $165,000, $170,000 a year, phenomenal pension. And no matter what they tell you, it's a lifetime appointment. You can count on one hand how many have not been retained. They all get retained, so it's a lifetime appointment. That being the case, for those who have been given a lot is expected. And that's all I've said to them from the beginning.
We also have a question from Stephen Cadrin, Cadrin Galleries. Has the Sheriff's Office outsourced office services to keep overhead down?
We have outsourced some things that legally, contractually, and security-wise we've been able to do. In the area of electronic monitoring, for example, we found that there was a service in pre-competent based in Aurora where, as opposed to us having people in front of a computer screen that were watching the detainees to see if they left their house and they took off and we had to send someone out, this place was doing it, and they were doing it for other jurisdictions. For a fraction of the cost, we were able to take all the people that we had watching monitors, we reassigned them. Many of them went back to the jail as correctional officers to cut down the number of correctional officers we had to hire. And this company now does it. And so when somebody breaks the barrier around their house, then they alert us and we go out and look for them. So certain things we've done like that. Our food services has all been contracted out for years. And there's probably more than you can imagine. I mean, even silly things. We had an ongoing problem, and we get criticized. And any folks here who have suggestions for us and how we can say it, please let me know, because a lot of the best suggestions have come from other people that I freely steal the ideas and say they were mine. But we had a woman who came to their jail to visit an individual who came there. She had her cell phone on her and a book or something. She couldn't get in. And she took the bus there, and when she went to get in, she was told you can't bring a cell phone in. And she said, well, where should I put it? And she was informed that we usually hide those out in the weeds out there. And she's like, interesting. And then she said, well, then there's a bar across the street. Maybe they'll hold it for you. And this poor woman went back and forth to us before she finally just got fed up and wrote a nasty letter. I think it was in the Reader. And someone in my office came running in here saying, can you believe this woman's doing it? And I said, hold on one second. Made a couple phone calls and said, yeah, she's 100% right. We're acting like idiots. And we can't do that. I mean, how is she supposed to know that, this is the list of everything you're supposed to bring in, not bring in? And so what we have now, and most all of them, the rest of them are going to have, because we're in the process of it, is something that O'Hare Airport has, where you have this vending machine where you put some money into it, and then you can store your cell phone in it, and you get a receipt, so that when you come back out, you put the receipt in, and you open it up, and you get your cell phone back. And you also, the county gets money off of that, because we get a percentage of everything doing it. So here's something where made people's lives easier. We contracted this out to this company. They come and maintain everything. We just get a part of it. And it helps people, too. So we have been trying to do it, but I'd be lying to you if I said we have completely pushed the envelope on areas that we can possibly do that, because we have more we can do, and I'm sure I'm forgetting a lot of it right now.
Just have a couple more comments or questions. Suzanne McKenna of City of Chicago says, what programs have you seen as the most successful in job, training, and placement, and have resulted in reduction in recidivism?
Two of the areas, one in particular is that deals with women. We have truly, under anyone's analysis, the best women's program in the country, and everybody acknowledges that. And Terry McDermott and her folks do just an amazing job. Our population, our female population, I think it was 2 years ago, was averaging about 1,000 people a day, and it's down to 600 now. Are we taking all the credit for it? No, but what we did do with this program it's somewhat using your brain, which is, once again, a phenom sometimes in county government. But what we did is we said, okay, these women have different issues, multiple issues. We have people who act as counselors with them. And I'm not talking about the one who, you know, murdered 20 people. We've sort of given up on her a little bit. But for the many of them, they're on drug cases, minor cases. We work with them on mental health issues. Most of them have been sexually abused. Almost all of them have been physically abused. We work on those issues. They average about 3.5 to 4 children each. We work with them in trying to teach them how to be better parents before they leave, so that when they leave, they can take care of them. In doing that, we feel a lot of that, almost case managing every one of these people. By doing that, we have driven down our numbers. And we know that factually because a lot of the people we see who've gone through this program not only don't come back to us, but they show up again in some of our programs that are volunteers. It's called Women of Power, and it's people who've gone through the program, and the number keeps growing. So in the female area, we have more programs than you can think of. We partnered with a private company, I think it was called Bright Space, or I can't remember the exact name. They built a daycare center on the grounds of the jail, so prior to the women leaving, we bring the children in, we reunite them, and it's a very emotional thing. It's really nice, but this company paid for everything, and we just have been the recipients of it. In the male area, it's trickier because we never know how long the men are with us, and so at any moment they can leave, so it's hard to plan a program. But our boot camp has been particularly successful. We have boot camps around the state. Our numbers are the best, and trust me, everybody cooks their numbers. These are real numbers, folks. The reason it's a good number is because we actually have an aftercare element, that when we just don't spend 18 months or weeks yelling and screaming at them and telling them to do push-ups. We then have job programs, and we have skills that we teach them while we're there, and then we follow them for the next, I think it's in the next year and a half, we follow them to make sure we connect them with jobs. So it's a well thought out program for them, but the boot camp is a very small percentage. The vast majority are male population that we don't provide a lot of services to. We have a drug program that's very good, but we don't have enough space for most of them. So by and large, most of them are just being released right out to the street, which is a big problem because the common thought is they're all going down to the prison system. 80–70% of them go straight from our jail back to the street because they're being put on probation or their case is dismissed. And yet the time, and Haymarket Center, which does such a wonderful job. It is the truth, though. I'm so glad you mentioned it, because the women's program is basically Haymarket and us working as a team, and they do most of the work with the women's side of it. But the male side of it, I don't know, no one's up to that challenge. But it's just very tricky, because you can think of it, if you have a carpentry program, for example, that runs 18 months, how can I, in good faith, put somebody in that program when I don't know how long they're going to be with me? So they do it for 6 months, and then they get released. My bologna sandwiches are so good, they're going to come back for the next 12 months? No. We've just wasted 6 months on someone that's not going to be there. Whereas prisons, they know how long people are going to be there. They can fit them into programs. The male population is very, very difficult. We've come up with a volunteer-type program with ministers and community leaders, and it's about 1,300 people right now. And what we're trying to do is, because we actually have a functioning computer system now, it's an amazing concept, folks. We had a DOS-based computer system up until about 6 months ago. Yeah, we could play Pac-Man on it, that was about it. And we actually have a state-of-the-art computer system now, and our goal is to break down males regionally and try to connect them with these folks who have volunteered that they wouldn't mind if I start steering some people to them. The question is transportation, because a lot of people you lose when they walk out the door. It's the last you see them, and so some of the churches have agreed to send vans over to pick some of the guys up. But it's a work in progress, but it's all volunteer work that was us trying to think outside the box. Once again, don't spend any money, but how can we utilize some of these true heroes that are out in the community that are willing to work with a difficult population?
I want to also mention we have a wonderful partnership with the Sheriff's Office with the Haymarket Center. We have a moms program for pregnant women. We feel that they would be better served at a place like Haymarket Center. They have a drug problem. We don't, after they relish having moms in the jail who are pregnant and preparing for delivery, we help them get off of drugs and also make sure they have a good, solid delivery of their child. We also run the furlough program, and we also run the residential program. So we're strong partners with Cook County Sheriff's Office, and we're very proud of that partnership, and it's part of cost savings. It's much cheaper for us to provide the services in communities, programs like Haymarket Center versus being in the jail system, and the people get off to a positive start, what have you. So I want to thank Tom Dart again for his wonderful presentation. We have a couple of things to come out of fall asleep after those 11-hour days, another copy of the City Club of Chicago, and certificate, honorary membership to the City Club of Chicago. Thank you so much again. You've restored our faith in good government.